morning. My name is Michael Charity. I am a native of Alexandria. I was born, actually, I wasn't born in Alexandria. In 1944, blacks went to D.C., born in Freeman's Hospital. But I was raised in Alexandria, 409 North Patrick Street, which is right around the corner here. My mother was Ruth Thomas. My father was William Charity. My mother was from Alexandria. My father's from a little town, Upperville, Virginia, right outside of Middleburg. And he moved here when they were young people. The charities, there's a lot of charities in the in Alexandria. My father's like 10, I had about 5 uncles and 4 aunts on my father's side, and I had 1 uncle and 3 aunts on my father's side. So I have about 35 or 40 cousins in Alexandria. And by the name Charity, it's an odd name, so you hear that name Charity, they would connect the dots and they knew me, you know, and that was kind of good and bad being in Alexandria because everybody knew you, so you couldn't do anything wrong. You didn't want to, as they say, disrespect your family name. But I lived at 409 North Patrick Street, which is right next door to a Third Baptist Church right now. Wonderful community. I mean, it was like a Norman Rockwell black community. You know, even though it was segregated, we had everything we wanted in that community. The doctors, the lawyers. I grew up around my admirers. I grew up around them. You know, Lawyer Raby, Otto right here on Samuel Otto right here on Patrick Street. The teachers lived here in the community too, so they went to churches with us. So you always be on your best behavior because you never knew who you were running to. And by my mother and father, they were the matrix of the family. So all my cousins and stuff, they would come around our house unannounced. They would just come in, especially during the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving. It was just the festive occasions. And see, by growing up around my aunts and uncles, they were my role models. Like now, the kids don't know their aunts and uncles like we did. You know, my Uncle Harry, my Uncle George, my Aunt Irene, my Aunt Margie, my Aunt Elsie. I can still name them. My mother's side, Aunt Margie, Aunt Lacelle. They were all around us all the time. And it was just wonderful. I mean, it's hard to explain now. I look back at it. I came through the Alexandria today. I look at how it's changed since I've been here. I know everybody says it's changed, but it's gone, you know. But being here, we were raised, like I said, on Patrick Street, and all of my neighbors, everybody knew one another. You heard us say everybody could, and the parents could correct you, they could spank you, they would tell you what you did wrong, so you couldn't do wrong too much, right? So, but we had a typical good childhood. We played cowboys and Indians back in the day. The girls played hopscotch, and we played marbles, and we played just different games, rode our bicycles around town. We never had a new bike. We always put our bikes together and ride our bikes. We had skates, the kids rode skates. And after the skates were gone, skates were bad, we would take 2x4s and make skateboards out of them, you know? Put the skates on the 2x4, then we get a soda crate, put that on top of that and get 2 handles, and that was our skate thing. We would ride around town and do that all day long. I mean, we just used to make up things. And when I was little, we always wanted guns, cap guns for Christmas. I think about now, we would walk around town with our cap guns in our holster and shoot each other like that. If they did that now, it would be a riot in town. So you kids walk around now with cap guns and shooting at each other. It would be trouble. But that's what we used to do. We used to make our own toys. We had our bean shooters. We had our slingshots. Oh man, we just had a great time in Alexandria. And everywhere you went, like I say, everybody knew you. And when I was a little boy, I had a paper route. I used to serve papers here in Alexandria. And a lot of my customers were my teachers, my teachers were my customers. Lawyer Raby up here on Pellance, the Raby building on Pellance Street, they was my customers. Tucker right here on Alpha Street in Princess, that was my customers. But by you young and you don't know the significance of where they were all. They were just Lawyer Raven, Lawyer Tucker. I was collecting my newspaper every evening. It wasn't the Alexandria Gazette. I used to deliver the Washington National News or something, like a little square paper. It was in the afternoon after I got out of school. And I did that for until I got to the 10th grade. And but I always, my father always sticking us making money, like that. But then in high school, it was wonderful because I say like our teachers, we knew our teachers, and our teachers back then, by being not integrated, being a teacher was a big thing for a black person to be a teacher. So 'cause a lot of our teachers had master's degrees or PhDs, and they taught high school. So we got an advantage of doing that, the knowledge of doing that, and that helped a lot. But on my block, I keep going back, I had, like I said, I lived next door to Third Baptist, and matter of fact, I got baptized at Third Baptist. 'Cause my mother used to take us to the church every Sunday next door and all that kind of stuff. And after my mother passed in 1965, my mother was very young. She died of breast cancer, 48 years old. And that was kind of rough for us to take because she's the matriarch of the family, But, life goes on. But I was saying doing that, my father was a cab driver. And my father was like our hero to the whole family. He knew everybody in Alexandria. Everybody in Alexandria just about knew my father. And that was good and bad, but it was what it was. He used to, I look back now, and you see how grown I am, and I look back at how my father and mother survived. Back then, women didn't work. So my father drove the cab, and we were young. We didn't understand why Daddy didn't go to work because most of our family friends, other friends, they would get up and go to work. Well, my father was in business for himself, more or less, and he's raised all 5 of us off driving a cab, and bought that house right there on 409 Street, 409 North Patrick, driving a cab. Like I say, my mother's did a little day's work, and my father, by him driving the cab, he came in contact with everybody, not only black and white in Alexandria, right? And so I never forget the first car, I was buying a new car, 1964 Chevy too, I never forget. And I couldn't get it financed, right? So my father came and I told him, Dad, I can't get the finance. Will you co-sign? He said, no, man, you wouldn't co-sign. He said, I'll tell you what you do, go down to the bank. I said, go down to the bank. He said, go down and see Taylor Burke at the bank. Never forget that. And I went down there, and I was kind of nervous, and I told him who I was, and Taylor Burke came out. Back then, he had, never forget, his parakeet on his shoulder, right? And he walked around the bank, and I told him who I was, and he said, oh, you will charity. You will charity, son. Now, mind you, Taylor Burke was much older than me, but segregation, he didn't call him Mr. Charity. He called him Will Charity like he was a little boy. I said, yeah, I'm Will Charity. He said, what do you want? I said, I want to get a car. And I told him what it was. He said, okay. He said, we do it on a handshake. He said, if you don't pay for it, I'll come look for your father. I never filled any application, no nothing. He gave me the money, $2,400 for that car, and I paid it back just on my father's name. Never forget that. And I was coming by this morning, I looked down at this house on Queen Street. Reverend Atkins, he used to be the pastor at Alpha Street Baptist Church right there. Now, Alpha Street is a big mega church then, but when he was back there, it was a little small church. And I looked at those guys. So, and Reverend Hargrove, he was at Ebenezer. Matter of fact, my church is 2 blocks down here on Queen Street, Ebenezer. And of course, everybody knows about Miss Blue's drugstore. That was the only place we could go sit down and eat. We had Dr. Carpenter next there on Orinoco Street. We had Miss Dorothea's business right there. She used to do hair out there. And then we had the Miss Bracy up there. He had a flower shop. And then we had Potter Prim's. I'll never forget Potter Prim's cleaners. When they opened, they remodeled. And it was a drive-through cleaners. You could actually drive your car, give the clothes to the people, and you could see your clothes coming in the rack, coming down, do the thing like that. They would give you your clothes. You never got your car and went out the back way. It came out on Orinoco Street. They was ahead of a time back then, I have so many memories. By then, I went to Charles Houston as an elementary school. And then at Charles Houston, I was a patrol boy. They had the patrol boys back then. You would, at school got out at 3 o'clock to 2:45. the patrol boys would go outside and take their position on each block like that and help the kids, cross the street and go home, stuff like that. And then we would march in the George Washington Parade. That's the George Washington Parade back in the day. And it was so odd and funny and bad at the same time. The only black participant in the parade was the Parker Gray High School band. And they would put them at the end of the parade, at the end of the parade. And we would wait. It was so cold. It was coming down Washington Street back then, all the way down Washington Street. And everybody would leave. Well, all the blacks would stay because they would put Parker Gray at the end of the parade, right? And they were right behind the horses, and we'd horse manure on the ground like that, and they had to march through the parade. March through the horse shit, really, walk through that like that. But we would wait for them, and I'll forget, you see the band coming, you see that majorette, they were strutting, and that's all we would wait like an hour or two for them to come down that street like that. It was just, it's just the way it was. Yeah, when I got to Parker Gray, which is right up here back in West Street back in the day, and I could walk to school. And I played a little football the first 2 years, and then I was like the manager of the basketball team for the last 2 years. And then we used to go on trips for the basketball team, especially the basketball team. And back then, T.C. Williams was superintendent of schools when I was in school, right? He was like George Wallace. Everybody know about T.C. Williams. We would get all the old we would get their books. They transferred their books. We get their books. We get their old football. We get their old equipment. And sometimes he would give us the old raggedy buses. But back then, going to Manassas was like an hour and a half, 2 hour ride. It wasn't nothing for the bus to break down, or anybody give us a peanut butter jelly sandwich to eat going down like that, But you didn't know any better, and you just wanted to play football. And you got on the bus and you went down there. But when you're living and going through it, you don't think about how bad it is or what it was until you get older and you look back. But I had a lot of role models in my family. I had my aunts and my uncles, especially like my aunts. They were singing the Charity Sisters. They were very popular in the city. My father and my two uncles, the charity guys, they had a little group. They would play all through the city. My Aunt Margie, back then on Queen Street, I looked down Queen Street, that was like the mecca for black people on Queen Street back in the day. On Friday night, Saturday night, the who's who, everybody's on Queen Street. You could literally not see the street, so many people be walking up and down on Queen Street, especially because you had the movie up there, you had the American Legion, and you had the Elks Home in the nighttime. During the daytime, like I said, the calf stand, my father worked on the calf stand, was up there. They had Dance's Barber Shop, they had Carver Theater. One time they had a High's store. High's was like an ice cream store. My aunt used to work in that one. And then they transferred the High's to a Windsor men's store. You ever know the Windsor men's store? They moved to King Street, but the original one was up on Queen Street. Then you had Sargent's Restaurant. Then you had other movie on the other side like that. They turned it to a pool room. But it was just a wonderful time to come up and be raised in like that. Okay, after high school, I got married. No, I left Alexandria in 1963. I moved to Washington, D.C. And I got married over there. And when I moved to Washington, D.C., it was a whole new world, I never went to a place where we could go to different restaurants. We could go to any movie you want to over there. It was just opened my eyes, to what we couldn't do compared to what we didn't have over here. But I worked at the library. My first job, I had a good government job at the Library of Congress. And I stayed there like 15 years. And it was a good job, a good job. And I think about the Library of Congress. Back when I was a little boy, I couldn't come in this library. Matter of fact, the first time I came to the library was 3 years ago. I'm 81 years old. When they started that black thing out here on Queen Street, and I was kind of nervous coming in. Even then, I was coming in, wow, all this time and I worked in the Library of Congress for 15 years, but I never came in this library because when I was coming up, you could not come in this library, you know. And I came here, the first time 3 years ago. And, it's interesting because I used to do that stuff like that. Yeah, well, that happened in like before I was born, 1939, and we knew the history, but we just knew, at least during my time, we just knew not to come up here in this library. I mean, it didn't even cross my mind to come in, it was just so, no, you couldn't do it, just like going down King Street, you couldn't sit down, you couldn't eat like that stuff. So when you try not to put yourself in a position where you get in trouble, at least I did, to coming in there like that. But I had, like I say, my mother was a matriarch of the family, and one of my mother's best friends was Helen Miller. You ever heard Helen Miller? She has the playground named for her down here on Queen Street, and they were very good friends. Back then, they were her sisters and brothers, her kids, and my sisters and brothers were like sisters and brothers to Miss Helen Miller, and like that. And they used to go to PTA meetings. That was a big thing. They'd go to PTA meetings, raise the sand, trying to get, make sure we do the right thing. And then after my my mother passed, Miss Helen Miller continued on with her endeavors. And she's in a legacy of Alexandria. My other aunt, Elsie Taylor, she's a legacy of Alexandria. She's on the marker, I think they have a marker down here somewhere down by the river a couple of months ago. It did a dedication for her. My aunt, not one of my cousins, Dear James, she's in the Hall of Fame up here on Charles Houston. She's a big doctor up in Boston. My sister, one of my sisters, my cousin Becky, she sings. She's been all over the world singing. But I didn't, I didn't do that. I couldn't. I wanted to be like my father, but I couldn't feel it. I tried to drive a cab, but I didn't have the hustle like he had, to do that. Because, like I said, my father do that driving a cab. It was so big in our life, it just, I'd hard to explain it because he was doing Uber before Uber was doing. He had most of his passengers used to call him at home to pick him up, take him to school. They take kids to school, pick them up and take, different people to work in the morning, or pick them up in the evening and take them home. He did a lot, but the majority of his job was regular customers. No, this is the tale he told me. When he met my mother already had my oldest sister, Beverly. I had three, it was five of us. My sister Beverly, me, my sister Dee Dee, my other sister Vicky, and my younger brother Rozier. And so when he met my mother, and all of them are gone now, I'm the only one left. When he met my mother, he was doing construction work, he said. And then on a part-time, he would drive the cab on the weekends. And he said, Michael, I could make more money driving that cab than I was doing construction. He would rent a cab from a lawyer Wavy up here. And so then he started driving the cab full time. He would lease it from Robert Wavy. Then he got his own cab. And he got, in his own business. But getting back to, like I was saying, playing in our neighborhood, I never forget one day we was playing. Used to have a mailbox right here on Patrick and Princess Street. And even the kids, we would play on the mailbox. And one day I got, like it was a horse, we get up and play a horse. And one day it fell over and broke both my legs, right? No. And I was in the hospital a long time. I had to learn how to walk all over again. But when it fell over, the ambulance came, and then the police came, and they tried to charge me with breaking in the mailbox, right? Black thing. And so my father knew Lawyer Wavy, and he came, I was little then, but they were telling me, he said they came to court, and they countersued the city because the mailbox should have been nailed to the ground. But they were in all the white neighborhoods, they were nailed to the ground. But in black neighborhoods, they were just placed on no resistance force falling over. So they countersued and they paid for my hospital bill like that. But that was so, hard to me because I learned how to walk over again and all that kind of stuff. But I was around 9 or 10. Yeah, 9 or 10. If I could say on my block where I lived, I had great neighbors. I had the Chisleys, the Addisons across the street, Mara and Terry, they're still alive. I had Tommy Thomasine Woods. I had, oh man, and like when we were young in Alexandria, of course, we didn't have indoor plumbing, right? We had a outhouse, a bathroom outside. And so when you had the bathroom outside, you had to go. But at nighttime, you couldn't go out at night, so they had what they call a slop bucket. And you bring the house, bucket in the house. And my job was to empty the slop bucket every morning. I had 3 or 4 chores I would do at home. We had a wood stove, and I would have to get the wood and get the coal. They had a coal guy around the corner from us on Princess Street called Woodyard Shorty. He had the coal, wood, and sell it to you. You had hard coal, soft coal, and a timber to start the stove up. And my father, one day Christmas, my father gave me a wagon. And I was so glad I thought I had a wagon. But that wagon was for me to go get the coal and get the wood and come back and get the fire started. My father drove the cab, in the morning. I have to get up, shake the stove down, get all the ashes out, put a little soft coal in, and get the stove hot. Make sure you didn't get it too hot, because sometimes I mess up, the hot stove gets so hot, it would turn red, So, oh my God, I take the vent, and open the vent and stuff like that. Right around the corner, not that far. But even though I put the coal in there, sometimes it would fall out, a few kernels would fall out. And my father would look at it, he'd say, well, wait, Mike, come here. Go back there, I think you dropped it. I had to go back there and pick up the little ones I dropped and put them in. And then in the backyard, we was like a little farm. Sometimes we had chickens in the backyard, and we had a big dog. Back then, dogs weren't pets like now. I see people walking dogs. That kind of still blows my mind, The dogs are for to protect your house. And the dog would stay out. Our dog never came in the house. Never. He chained up outside. Snow, winter, cold, I don't care. He stayed in the doghouse. That's what they call it, in the doghouse. And no food. He ate what we ate. Some people go and buy dog food. A dog ate what you ate, And if that dog, if you came in the yard, that dog didn't bark at you, we get rid of that dog, get rid of him. And because people back then, we didn't have keys. I didn't have a key to my house. I didn't know how to I'll never forget this. When I first left my house, I got my own apartment, and I had a key, and I didn't know how to open the door with the key because I never had a key to our house. You would just knock on the door and come in. It was an insult if you knocked on the door, and my mother came to the door and she knew who you were. Why are you knocking on the door? Come on in. So you come on in the house. You would knock on the door and come in. And I said, like my father, like he knew all these people in the city. I look back now, I used to see Mr. Day, Ferdinand Day. I used to see all these famous people now. They would come to my father's house back in the day. I didn't know that. I didn't know what they were doing. And we had the house was set up. We had a front room, a dining room, and a kitchen. And the front room was for like company. Nobody went in the front room, That's where you had you could smoke. They had the big ashtrays and cigarette lighters and candles. That was the front room, the more formal room. And I would come in there and I would see all these guys standing, in the front room talking all the time. And little bit known, they were part of some kind of secret something that they were doing like that. And my father wasn't one of the main ones in the thing, but I used to know they used to come to my house all the time, And by you seeing these people, you knew who they were, but you didn't know what they were. They just Mr. Day, can't forget Mr. Shaw, but I forget these guys that was younger then, used to come in there all the time. And but my father knew them, He knew all the ministers, the lawyers and stuff like that. My father knew, And it was we had a very good life. I can't complain at all. Now I look back. I look back at some of my cousins, like I say, it's like about 35 or 40 of us, and we're still close. And I'm sure when they see this, they'll say, Mike, you left out this, you left out that. But they can come down to their part. No, Back then, you didn't talk, parents didn't talk about what they did or doing. It's like you didn't ask any questions. Like now, you know, kids ask you everything, but back then, you didn't get in their business, so to speak. Uh, you just didn't do that. I knew, like my father did, back in the day, I said he'd be around there at the Oaks home, and I would come around there sometime, they would gamble, right? And he would make some little money, and he would call my mother's phone, tell me to come around and get the money before he would lose it. And I would go in there and knock on the door, like a little thing to open the door and see you come on in. And you see all these guys in there, pillars of community. They'd be in there playing pool, shooting around and drinking, because that's the only place probably could go. That was home or the American Legions. And back then, Virginia was, they didn't have liquor stores, ABC stores. They had one, I think, down here on Wall Street. But they didn't have any neighborhood liquor stores in Alexandria. So they had a lot of bootleggers. And the bootleggers catch the bus, go to D.C., and come back and do their little thing, sell their liquor. And the secret thing, sometimes they would drive, and the code was you'd come down Jeff Davis Highway. That was a long way around because a lot of lights. But sometimes they would take a chance and come down past the airport, right? And so crazy. The police will watch you coming down the highway. They stand, never forget, right there by the airport. They see you come over the hill, and they pull you over. And we would get out of the car, lay on the ground, and they would search the car, see you had any liquor in the car. And you didn't have any liquor. But you didn't tell anybody about it because you were just glad you didn't get killed. You just come on in. That's just part of life. You just do like that. And there's so many things. I was thinking about the bowling alley. We had a bowling alley up here on Washington Street. The blacks couldn't go in and bowl. We couldn't bowl, but we could set up the pins, right? So we could go up and set up the pins for the little buns. And the white guys would throw the ball at you before, trying to set the pins up, and they would throw the ball at you like that, I know, segregation is a trip, but you just thought that's the way it was, We couldn't go in there. But you knew where you couldn't go, and you knew where you could go. So it didn't bother you too much. I mean, it bothered you, but you just knew, you knew your place. And by this being, because all this block was blacks, all down Columbus Street, all around Orinoco Street, Princess Street. And when I was on here, Route 1, Patrick Street was a two-way street. That's before they built the Wilson Bridge. So it's a quiet little street, just like here, Columbus Street, Alpha Street, and Patrick Street. They were all little bucolic, small, quiet streets. But once they opened up Woodsville Wilson Bridge, the story goes, they wanted to come down by the river. The white people said, no, they ain't coming down by the river. So they brought it right through the black section of Alexandria, so they came down through there. But when we were building the bridge at nighttime, we used to get our bikes and ride across the bridge and all that kind of stuff, doing like that. And I remember when they had the statue right here on Washington Street, the Confederate statue. I remember they finally got that moved. And, those things they had to let you know, to mark their line, to know, that you don't belong here. And then, King Street was, that was the dividing line. One side of King Street divided the south from the north. And I was grown. I never went on the south side of Alexandria because I had no need. I didn't know anybody over there. But I never went on the south side. But we used to go down King Street, and you could look at the clothes, but you couldn't try them on. But they had a little men's store down there called Brown's Men's Store. And it was a Jewish white store. But they had a black guy in there. And you could go in there, he would let you try the clothes on. Mr. Bell, right, one of my heroes, he taught me, how to dress and all that kind of stuff. And we did that. And then, like I said, like the Chisleys next door to us, they were two or three of them were teachers, and one of them had big-time government jobs, and one of their husbands had a vet. The first time I seen a black guy with a vet, and he had Mr. Herman had a black vet. He had a little scarf around his neck, a little tam. But the Chisley, one of the Chisleys, they used to sponsor debutantes, and my sisters were debutantes. And by me being one of the boys, and I knew how to do it, I went to debutante twice because I knew how to waltz, I knew how to sit at the table, I knew how to eat with my forks and stuff like that. And the debutante ball was a big thing because you go and practice for 2 or 3 weeks before you do your debut. And I did that about 2 years. And we didn't wear tux, we wore tails, And I haven't had a tails on since then. But people don't wear tails like they do like that. But the debutante ball was in D.C. You can do like that. A Corvette.
Oh,
Corvette, I'm sorry, Corvette.
I thought so.
Yeah, Corvette, right. As the only first black guy, Mr. Herbert, had a Corvette. I think he was a lawyer, something like that. But he used to let us ride, give us a ride around the block. And then Mr. Chisley, one of them was he drove the ice truck. Back then, we didn't have refrigerators. We had a ice box. So he would come down a big block of ice and put it in your refrigerator, in your ice box, so to speak. And you would keep the ice for maybe 2 or 3 days, and you go get some more ice. Or you take the ice and make icicles, all stuff like that. And then by us not having a bathroom outside, we would take our bath in a big tin tub, So it being us four, we get in line. We get on Saturday nights, you take your bath, you get in line, and you get in the tub right there behind the stove, and you get in and get out before the water gets too cold, and you do it like that. And we had like chores, around the house. You would, do the awning, hang the clothes out in the backyard with clothespins, and you'd learn how to do that. You would put your sheets on the outside and your underwear, and the inside nobody could see your underwear, stuff like that. And one time we had some, like I say, we had those chickens out there, and that taught us not to be pets. Because I had a little chicken I raised, and I asked my mother, well, I forgot his name, where's my little chicken? She said, oh, Mike, you ate that chicken 2 weeks ago. I said, I ate him. She said, yeah, because y'all love these chickens. She said, I had to stew them because he was so old. I would have, usually I fry him. She used to fry him, but you loved him so much that I didn't want to kill him, and you ate him. So that taught me not to get attached to animals, And to this day, I'm still not a dog lover. My wife had dogs, but I used to walk them, but reluctantly. But dogs were for outside, protect you, not to be inside, sitting on your sofa and all that kind of stuff. That was, no. You see dogs running around the street all the time. And then they had of course, they had the swimming pool. Never forget that. Up by McDonald's up here, that's where they had the black swimming pool because, we couldn't go to the white swimming pool. And that was fabulous. I mean, we used to have water shows at night and every summer, and they had the 3 diving boards. They have 2 low diving boards, 1 high diving board. And I know how to swim. I used to dive off the high diving board, do a jackknife or full gainer. I don't know what a full gainer was, a half gainer, dives. And I still swim to this day. I still swim. I'm 81 years old, and I swim at least once or twice a week when I get a chance to. Because we learned how to swim back then. And we used to make money. How we made money when I was little, I was telling my kids. We used to collect bottles, soda bottles. Back then, soda bottles, these people drink soda bottles, throw them on the ground. And you get 2 cents for a soda bottle or 5 cents for a big one. So you had 2 or 3 soda bottles and you had about 10 to 12 cents. You was doing pretty good because you go buy candy for 2 cents for a candy or buy pickles and put the little peppermint stick in there and eat the pickles. And then we would make money collecting junk and take it to a bank's junkyard. Used to be up on Queen Street, right across from Blue Mirror. Used to be a black guy here on the junkyard right there. He could take his junk in there, he'd give you some money, and we take that money and go by Blue Murray after we got out of the pool, and there's popcorn. That popcorn was so good. After the pool, you'd be so hungry, and do like that. And that Blue Murray is still there. It's still there right there. I was low, that place right there. But you had
Is that the place by the Charles Houston Rec Center?
Yeah, right up the street. Right up there. And that's been there for a long time. I think it's a historic site, I think, by now, right? It's been there for so long. And then we had, of course, the Little Jim's right on Pendleton Street. Everybody knew Little Jim's. I mean, that was a mecca on Friday nights. The fish boxes, the fish sandwich, and I never had a Bill Cutler Royal. I haven't had a Bill Cutler Royal since Little Jim's closed. That was 50 years ago. But I'll be working in D.C. some Fridays. I would bring some of my coworkers over here to get a sandwich. Oh, they fell in love with Little Jim's. Every Friday, we would ride all from D.C. to come over here to get a fish box from Little Jim's. And of course, yes, I say all my immediate role models are my uncles and my aunts. By them being around you so much, if you start acting bad or we grow up, you say, are you acting like your uncle? And I would give you some, oh, I'm not crazy. You be bad. You say, oh, your uncle was just like that when he was a little boy. So you figure that gives you hope you outgrow it. And or you look just like your uncle. Like I looked like one of my uncles. I was tall like my Uncle George. And then they would just correct you. Like another was odd thing in my family. My mother and my father married. My mother married my father brother married sisters and brothers married sisters and brothers. So my Aunt Elsie was my father's sister, and my Aunt Elsie married my mother's brother, Bobby, right? And so a lot of us look alike. Like my cousin Becky looked just like my mother, and my cousin Jeffrey, we look just like almost like twins. To this day, a couple of days ago, he kept looking at me and look, man, he looks like I said Spider. Yeah, he looked just like Spider. I said, well, I'm like that. But and I said, my uncle back in the day, before the Redskins, we didn't look at the Redskins on TV. It wasn't any black players on Redskins. So on Sunday after church, we would go up to the school and see the Alexandria Rams. There was a black semi-pro football team. And all our heroes was on that team. The Willises, my Uncle Bubby, Taylor boys, Joe Johnson, his father, they were quarterback. Taylor's, like I said, and had one or two white guys on the team, sports out on there. But those guys were my heroes, for football. And the Willises lived around the corner from me. And so one of their sons and me, we were like the water boys for the team, which was a big job, big thing for us, because we would go up there and get the game free. And my Uncle Bubby was on the team. And it's so hard to explain how, you be so connected to your heroes. You see them every day, all the time. And they weren't not just football players. You see them when they're not football players. And so you knew that, what kind of life they might live. But it was just a great life, man. I mean, if I could do it again in some circumstances, I could do it again, all over again, because I never was hungry. I never, went without food. Christmas time was a big thing. I was almost 10, 11 years old before I realized it wasn't a Santa Claus. That's how much your parents could control your mind, We would go to bed at nighttime, wouldn't be no tree, no nothing. And wake up the next morning, the tree would be up, the toys, bikes and stuff like that. It must be, it was Santa Claus put them to you. And you would believe it because, where else it could have come from? But as you got older, you realize how much they went through to keep your imagination that there was a Santa Claus. Yeah. Oh, yeah, so many. Like now, I tell my stories to my grandkids. And now I have two sons. One of them's almost 60 years old now. And the other one's like 47. But I have two sons, and each one of my sons have 5 kids, So I have 10 grandkids and 2 great-great-grandkids. And they all know Alexandria. I mean, they know it. I bring them over here and I point to it so much that they say, oh, Papa, we already told me that, Papa. Okay, I know. But because you want them to know their history and where they came from. And I've been blessed. Like I have one of my grandkids she works for United Airlines. She's an airline steward or something. And her name's Charity. She said, Papa, when I come in D.C., Alexandria, the National Airport, not every time, so most time somebody see my name, they'll ask me, do I know somebody else named Charity? She said, I'm used to it now like that. But because it's such a, it's a very hard name like that. I was talking to a lady, I was at the pool one day, and I was talking to this guy, and I told him I'm from Alexandria, and he said, and my wife's name was Alexandria. And she mentioned her name, but I think she's from a little younger than me. I didn't know her. I said, I don't know her. I said, but I bet she know me. So he said, what do you mean? I said, tell her you met at Charity, you know. And he called me back. He said, man, he knew you, she knew you, she knew your cousins, she knew everybody. She was my cousin's best friend. So I was in this line just yesterday. I was in a restaurant, and this lady I was talking, and she asked me, you know, my name. I said, Charity. She said, Charity, I knew. And she used to work with one of my cousins 25 years ago, you know. So it's I know it's a curse and a blessing, but you just want to keep the Charity name going, and it will continue, you know.